Hello guys, I am back from another video and yes, I am back from my hiatus yesterday. If you didn't know, yesterday I had to get the vaccine, which I recently gotten, and the reason why I didn't made a video yesterday is because I was having a bad headache, as it's basically one of the side effects. One of the other side effects is making my arm numb. So, I can't even, move it as properly, but I'm starting to work it out. So, anyway, I am back from another video, and today we're talking about Deku was the Grim Reaper. So, in the last video, Deku, after Izuku was told that he's going to be killing a certain demon that's been terrorizing a certain area of Japan, Izuku gets there as it turns out that these demons were worshippers of Satan. Being one of the 7 demon lords of hell, specifically, he represents wrath. So, when Izuku gets there, Izuku meets his childhood friend, being Maria Tachabane, a half Frenchman, half Japanese. She's a part of the sector that worships the Archangel Uriel, the Angel of Love, and also the Angel of the Sun, and her partner Prometheus. So, after defeating these demons and also defeating the egg that the demons were worshipping, being one of the children of, Satan, Izuku killed it and destroyed it. So, when Izuku finished that job, they basically escape as they decide to go to a ramen shop so they can have a bit of, catching up to do. So, Izuku talked about how he kind of fell in love with Todoroki, even saying that he has this weird feeling in his chest, which he doesn't know what it is. But, unfortunately, or fortunately in this case for her, aka, her, she tells Izuku that she's obviously in love. You're obviously in love with Todoroki, she said. As Izuku just says this. Sure. Izuku doesn't know how to process this feeling, because the only feelings that he had is disdain and anger and rage towards the demons. So, that's what Izuku thought, but now he has feelings for this girl, being Todoroki. So, after Izuku gets back, Izuku was told that, his childhood friend is going to be sleeping with him in one of his beds, while Izuku is just going to be sleeping on the couch. So, that's basically what happened last episode. So, let's talk about what happens next. So, Izuku trains a lot, as it's going to be soon going to be the sports festival, as Maria says this. Hey, Izuku, what is this so-called hero festival or that sports festival thing? As Izuku just says this. Well, it's all about, showing off the so-called heroes that are have agencies that we can, do stuff. Like, for example, show them how strong we are. As she says this. Really? It's similar to how we get, nominated as for that whole thing about joining a. Wait for a second. Joining an agency. What is that agency going to be for you? Like, which agency are you going to be going to? As Izuku just says this. I don't know. Apparently, if you win, you basically get everything. Like, you get internships and money, basically. As she says this. Huh. As Azrael says this. Being, right next to Izuku. As Azrael says this. Izuku. As Izuku just says this. Lord Azrael, what is it? As he says this. It seems that a demon is going to be going to the UA Sports Festival. Be on your guard. And you, worshipper of my sister, the so-called worshipper of my sister. Wait for a second. Uriel. I want you to help with Izuku's, well, little infestation. And if you do, I will gladly tell Uriel of your great deed. Right? As she says this, thank you, Mr. Azrael. Um, thank you. As he just says this. Very well. I'll be leaving now. And hurry up and start training. After all, the UA Sports Festival is after all important to you. Because you want to become a hero, right? As Izuku just says this. Anything for you, my liege. As Izuku bows down. As he says this. I'll be leaving. Ta-ta. As he disappears in dark smoke. With a bright flash coming after that. So, after a few weeks of training, it's finally time for the UA Sports Festival. So, everybody starts going there. Mostly families watching their children becoming heroes and many other things like that. So, Izuku gets there as Maria also comes in, but mostly as a spectator so she can look around, seeing that this demon is not causing any trouble. For now. So, Izuku steps up as apparently they're going to be having a speech. And the person that's going to be telling that speech is Izuku. Izuku just tells a speech about how he single-handedly, and this is metaphorically, Izuku just said it metaphorically, just punched all of his problems away. And everybody was weirded out by the speech, but they thought it was a, okay speech. So, they just clapped as after Izuku finished that speech, everybody started, saying that Izuku is actually a pretty nice guy, even though he seems a bit, emotionless. So, next is going to be the first event. The first event is obviously the obstacle race. So, everybody's completely excited for this, including, not only to, wait for a second, to Ibarra, Bakugo, and many other students. But for Izuku's just going to finish it in an instant, thanks to his quirk, being Angel, which allows him to just have, angel-like wings. So, Izuku starts creating these wings as one of the people there, being a man with red wings, says this. So he has a similar quirk to me. I'll be keeping wait for a second. I'll be keeping my eye on him. He seems quite interesting. As he smiles with a almost, almost influential type of, smile, the most confident smile that you can think of. Not like All Might, which, seriously, All Might's smile makes me creeped out a lot. Just putting that, face on anything would make it 10 times as creepier. So, when midnight arrives, she says this. So, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go! As everybody started off to the races. As Todoroki, still disguising herself as a man, just turns the, temperature down and basically freeze the floor. Izuku is still flying, and thankfully not frozen to the ground. So, Izuku starts flying off while Todoroki is in the lead, being first place while Izuku is in second place. Many of the other heroes in training basically get out their situation as they start going off to the finish line. Unfortunately, most of them were stopped by Todoroki as they're gonna be covering some serious ground. So, Izuku just flies over the zero pointers and many other things as Izuku sees several, heroes watching him because they want to see how much Izuku is, how powerful Izuku is, because he seems to be, as fast as Todoroki, even though he's considered as, a lower ranking standard of hero, even though for Todoroki, Todoroki is actually considered as a pretty powerful person, mostly because of her genetics and also being related to the number 2 hero. Wait for a second. So, Izuku while flying, Izuku starts seeing several people. Several of these people basically cheer them on. As Izuku goes to the other part of the obstacle race, being the minefield and also being the last part. So, Izuku just starts going ape crazy. So, Izuku brings out the 2 blades that were given to him by Raphael and basically starts slicing the bridge that Todoroki made for herself. And that is why I'm calling her like her and she, because, she still disguised herself as a, boy. So, after slicing off the parts of the bridge, which causes it to collapse, she basically falls down and gets knocked out as Izuku becomes the winner of the first event. So, the first event was won. So, the next event is the cavalry battle, which every single person starts looking at him, getting ready to get Izuku's points. As Izuku decides to pick his team. This team being Bakugo, Todoroki, and Shinso, which is surprising. So, Izuku tells Shinso that if he were to use his quirk on him, it would not work. So it's better to just control both of them instead, being Bakugo and Todoroki. As he says to himself, how the hell did he know my quirk? Ugh, whatever. As he starts using his quirk on both Todoroki and Bakugo, making them obedient. But not in that. Please don't put it out of context or something like that. Please don't. Anyway, so the event starts as Izuku tells Shinso to start using Bakugo's explosions, or just tell him to do it. So Bakugo starts using his explosions to basically maneuver everybody else away from them. As for Todoroki, she starts to create her fire and ice wall, which when NG, aka Endeavor, sees this, he starts getting all excited because Todoroki is finally using her fire side. He goes into this rant saying, finally, my child has finally used her quirk. Like that. So, while Izuku is seeing all of this, Izuku sees another person getting ready to grab his, headband. Being, wait for a second, Kirishima's team. Kirishima starts charging towards Izuku as Izuku decides to use a little bit of his magic. So, Izuku just says this, burn. As Izuku creates blue flames. As when everybody saw that, it was amazing. As everybody, after seeing that, well, let's just say Aizawa meets explain to do. As, well, wait for a second again. What? President Mike says this. Whoa, I didn't know that he has fire manipulation. So, mind telling me, Mr. Aizawa, what is this power that this kid has? As he says this. Sorry, but the only thing that they know is that his quirk is just called Angel, which allows him to basically create these wings. But I don't know what are these powers. They're definitely not normal. As he says this. Interesting. Either way, it seems that Izuku Midoriya is actually winning. As when Kirishima saw the fire, he starts telling everybody to go away. So, they start catching other headbands while Izuku creates a wall of thick blue fire, which nobody can ever, go through. So, Izuku sees above him Monoma with his team, using a copied quirk of Uraka, which Uraka is currently, working for him, as he says this. Time for you to die, you 1A trash! As he starts creating a explosion quirk similar to Bakugo because, during the whole, event, he touched Bakugo while nobody was looking. So, he gets ready to explode Izuku, as Izuku just tells, well, wait for a second, tells his little friend to help him out. As Shinso says this, right. As when, you know, Shinso said this, he basically just controls Monoma, which Monoma basically, explodes everybody in his team, causing them to lose. So, after that, it's basically the end of the, well, of this event. So, after this, it's going to be a lunch break. So everybody starts going to their lunches. As for Izuku doesn't want to eat lunch for now. He's just eating some sweet bread. Some pretty cheap sweet bread. In fact, tastes like sandpaper. Basically tastes like sandpaper. So, while Izuku was just eating some sweet bread that tastes like sandpaper, Izuku was approached by some girls from class 1B, asking if he's dating anybody or anything. Izuku tells them that he's not really interested in them and says that he's interested in somebody else. As they just move away, as Izuku gets, his eyes covered from behind, as she says this, "Hey Izuku," as Izuku just says this, "Oh, Maria, you're here," as she says this, "How did you know?" As Izuku just says this, "Well, it's obvious from your tone. It's pretty obvious to know you if know you, you basically get it. I literally known you for, my entire life. So I obviously know your tone." As she says this, "Oh well." So, as several of his classmates see the girl, let's just say, um, one of these, being Kaminari, starts coming towards her and says, "Hey, you look like a foreigner. So, what's your name?" As she says this, "The name's, um, Maria Tachibana. I'm a half Japanese, half Frenchman." As he says this, "Oh, came from the city of love, eh?" As Izuku just comes towards him and says this, "Don't you dare talk to her like that." As when Bakugo sees her, he says this, "Wait, Maria, I didn't know that you came here." As she says this, "Bakugo, it's been a long time, so, Bakugo, have you been, harassing Izuku or anything like that?" As he says this, "No, and besides, if he were to try, or even if I try to harass him, well, it would be hell for me." As she says this, "I guess you're right." As for Izuku arguing with, well, wait for a second, Kaminari says this, "Oh, come on, Izuku, why you're this mean? I mean, she's just... Wait a minute. Don't tell me that you're dating her." As Izuku just says this, "I'm obviously not. I'm just a concerned, childhood friend. And besides, I like somebody else." As they say this, "Wait, what? You're interested in somebody else? Like who?" As Izuku just says this, "It's none of your business." As Izuku starts blushing. As Ochako says this, "Oh really? Huh. I never seen you with this type of emotion before. Most of the time you just act like so, what do you actually call it?" As Izuku just says this, "Melancholy." As she says this, "Melan what?" As Izuku just says this, "I'm just calm. And besides, I like somebody else, and I don't want you ever hurting her, my childhood friend. And trust me, if you were..." Izuku creates his sword, given to him by not Ravael, I meant, you know, Raphael, I meant. Izuku brings his blade to his neck and says this, "I will slit your throat and let all of the blood seep through your clothes, and let the world see how much of a scum you are." As he says this, "Hey, man, wait for a second, sorry about that. Hey, I'm sorry, man." Don't worry, I won't hurt you or anything." As Izuku just says this, "You better not." So, after lunch, it's basically back to the sports festival. So, Izuku is basically getting ready for the final event, being the, wait for a second, the one-on-one battles. So, Izuku gets ready as the leaderboard basically comes up, as the first match is going to be between Izuku, aka him, versus a boy. This boy being Shinso, as Izuku just says this. Thankfully, I know his quirk, so I can easily see him by just coming forward to him and just beating him down, then throwing him away. As Izuku thinks of another strategy just in case if he were to have a weapon on his side. While he's thinking this, let's go to a different perspective. This perspective being Maria. So, let's begin. So, Maria is basically in the spectators area where they're watching the UA Sports Festival unfold. As she sees several robed fingers. I meant robed figures. I meant figures, not like fingers. Figures, I meant. People that are basically watching from shadows. They basically have this weird looking robe as she sees a mark of Leviathan. And if you don't know, the mark of Leviathan is a certain symbol. This symbol is the symbol for sulfur. And if you don't know, sulfur is one of the key components in alchemy. But in some religions, the actual symbol was changed to a symbol for the devil. And because of that, alchemy is considered as, bad sometimes. And I mean lightly. I mean, I don't really see people saying banish that person for making alchemy, basically like that. I just thought it was interesting about many different types of symbols being changed over time. So just imagine that these robed figures basically having these symbols on their cloaks. So they disappear in black smoke, nobody ever noticing, but Maria notices it, as she thinks that it's probably Leviathan's doing. Leviathan being one of the 7 demon lords, and said to be a gigantic sea monster in the actual ocean, and even considered as the actual, entrance to hell, because apparently Leviathan's mouth is apparently the so-called entrance to hell, which, trust me, I don't really like that idea. I think of every time I think of hell, I just imagine an actual gate of hell where there's an angel or a demon named Abaddon just basically tolling everybody. And by the way, that's an idea that they made for, my own separate universe, which let's just say it's going to be really important or going to be a special what if, which is going to be an anniversary for my founding this channel. So yeah, let's go back to Izuku. So, Izuku goes up to the plate as Izuku sees not Kirishima, I meant Shinso, as Midnight says this. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go! As in typical anime fashion, Shinso starts insulting Izuku, but Izuku doesn't answer him. So, Izuku just summons out his swords, as for, Shinso, he starts insulting him even more, but it doesn't work, because Izuku is emotionless, forced to be emotionless. So, Izuku comes closer to him, and closer, and closer, as Shinso was getting desperate, as Shinso punches him right in the face. Izuku thought it was a pretty weak punch, as Izuku just says this. You rely on your quirk too much. Allow me to show you what true training is. As Izuku grabs him by the face, as Izuku just throws him away, causing him to get slammed onto the wall. Izuku becoming the winner of this match. So, Izuku starts going off as it's the next match. This match is between him and Todoroki. Todoroki says this to Izuku. Alright, let's do this. So, give it your all, Izuku. As Izuku just says this, with a uncharacteristically almost weird voice, as Izuku just says this. Right. As she thought it was off-putting for Izuku because most of the time Izuku is emotionless, but after hearing Izuku stuttering a little bit, she was quite confused. As Midnight says this, 3, 2, 1, go! As Todoroki starts creating ice at Izuku's face, but Izuku creates flames, blue flames. As when, well, Endeavor sees this, Endeavor was reminded of his old son, but he ignored it and just watched Izuku's flames, thinking that it's interesting that Izuku got in blue flames, but for Todoroki, she has simple red flames, or just normal flames. Izuku just says this, Todoroki, why do you use your ice instead of your fire? It might be a little bit more effective against me. As Izuku just melts all the ice that Todoroki is making. As Izuku just is in front of Todoroki. As Izuku grabs her by the hip. As Izuku brings her closer. As Izuku just says this, Todoroki. Let's just say this is a request. Or should I say the confession? As everybody hears the confession, as Izuku just says this, I think I like you. Everybody, when they heard that, and by the way, they didn't know that Todoroki is actually a girl yet, as they thought it was, gay love. And if you don't know what that means, well, God. Anyway, Izuku just throws Todoroki away, but not hurting her too much. So she basically falls down to the ground and goes out of batteries, and basically Izuku wins. So, after that, Izuku starts leaving. So, the next match was going to be another match between a student and another student, and not Izuku yet. But after that, well, let's just say all of Class 1A's girls and some of the boys started coming closer to him as they say this. Wait, Izuku, you're into guys? As Izuku, um, sorry about that, wait for a Wait, Izuku, you into guys? As Izuku just says this. Not necessarily. As one of them said this, so you're bi? Says, well, wait for a second. Jiro, as Izuku just says this. Kind of, I guess. As Bako said this. So, you're basically bi. Heh. I'll support you, I guess. As for, wait for a second. Sorry about that. So, one of these people being, wait for a second. Maria says this. So, Izuku, do they actually know that Todoroki's a girl? As Izuku just says this. I promised her that I won't let anybody know that she is actually a girl. So, let's just say that, okay? So, after a bit of talking, saying that, Izuku is actually bi, one of them being, well, Kaminari says this. So, you're interested in, Todoroki? Huh. I never thought that you'd actually like her. I meant him. As Izuku just says this. I mean, yeah, he kind of looks feminine, so... As he says this. Heh. Anyway, I hope you have a good life or whatever. As Izuku just says this. Bye. So, after that, it's going to be the end of the episode. So this is going to be a cliffhanger, because the next episode of This What If is going to be a big one. So, I hope you're ready for that. So, I hope you liked the video. Comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye!